lot. Good morning. Thanks for being with us for this roundtable about cooperation to fight cyber security. It's going to be in French and English, so you have headphones if you need translation.
And in English, so if you need some translate device, it's available at the entrance. La cybercriminalité est devenue un enjeu majeur de notre époque.
This has become a major issue. It's for identity theft, also it of course is against private, public authorities, individuals, institutions. It is $8,000 billion, so it's the third world economy just after China and USA. International community has reacted. The General Assembly of UN has adopted a draft for a convention for fighting against IT use for criminal uses. In Europe, we have the Budapest Convention, so we go beyond institutions. We have police authorities, foundations, civil society. All of them have a really important role to play, but the efforts have to be intensified. What is the situation of cyber security in Europe? What are the challenges? How can we increase the cooperation between public and private authorities? What about Europol? What they can do? So many questions, and we are going to try and answer them. For that purpose, I have here Alexandru, Chief Head of Team, and then
Dalton, your Director of Tech Risk and Control de Coinbase. À ses côtés, le commandant Christophe Sancy,
who is part of the OFAC, and then Paul Alexandre Gillot, you are part of Europol, and Eric Salober, President of Human Technology Foundation, and then Mark, you are the Managing Director.
Merci beaucoup à tous les six d'être avec nous aujourd'hui.
Thank you to all of you for being here. Without further ado,
what are the major trends you are currently observing in cybercrime?
Yes. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Mark. I'm really proud to be here. Before I dive in a few trends, I would like to share a little detail that's going to happen today. This afternoon, 1 p.m., there is a press release taking place in Munich, where a child sexual abuse material sharing platform has been taken down by law enforcement, and the investigation started with us. And I'm super proud, at the same time super sad that we have to do it. But again, this is quite an important result, I think, of technology providers working closely together with law enforcement on this very painful topic. And I think that is also part of the trends that we do see. Crime continues, crime further internationalizes, crime further professionalizes. So, for example, what we do see happening in the dark web, people are building way stronger operational security measures. So to make it harder for law enforcement, as well as make it harder for other cyber criminals to take over their criminal enterprises. And I think in our responses we should be strong and but also more specific. So I really hope also during the panel session we can talk about specifics and not just a statement. We need to work more together. But I'm really proud to see that as a result of our efforts of the last few years, we're achieving results, and this is really done together. Europol is involved, German law enforcement, Dutch law enforcement, and I think that's what we should build on top.
Merci beaucoup, Marc. Eric,
thank you very much. Mark just mentioned that, talking about cyber crime, we have online harassment, we have pedopornography. What about you as representatives of civil society? What about cyber crime carried out by states? For example, fake news. Yes, we have to, I mean, we talk about hacking of facilities, but what is being hacked, in fact, are brains, actually. We can see it in the information war, we can see in the hacking of the most vulnerable people. With different stakeholders, we made a report about digital identity. What was the scope of this threat? What could be our response? When we talk about the protection of minor of age online, yes, on the one hand, these children say they are adults. Now, there is a law in France which has to put a limitation to pornography for children, but there are problems of territory. The problem is that we have to get to agree to put a limitation to this access. Not for morality only, but for a very simple reason. First of all, children discover sexuality before discovering affectivity, and also it becomes normal for people to see these images, and 50% is given to children because they think it's normal. It's an actual difficulty. Now we have a law. The question is, how capable are we to implement it? Since these are the adults, they say they are children, it's a matter of harassment. On the network, there are people who come and see us. How can we control a little bit better? And there, controlling the age is a key element. We think that there should be a control through double anonymity, a platform that allows at the same time to have access to contents without the provider. Neither the platform knows what you are doing. So you have some anonymity and you ensure that you have the required age, for example, to go to a specific network, and it's not that just a 60-year-old man who says that I'm a 12-year-old girl. And then the harassment of young people among themselves. They don't even need adult people to harass themselves. How capable are we to identify, to correct, to punish, to provide support the people who are guilty of harassment? Of course, we should not disclose the identity of people, and we have to keep the confidentiality of exchanges. So this is a little bit, we are at the edge, at the limit. What about the threats of the states? Well, yes, we are somehow in war with some states. There are all these cyber attack threats. I'm sure that the other speakers are going to talk about this as well. And we published a few months ago a paper about ideological war and civilization war. How, little by little, some ideas that democracy is not efficient, Russia is not an enemy, or Russia is not dangerous. These ideas are just little by little coming part of the ideas of the public. We talk about different security continuum in the cyber defense. We see that it undermines the efforts of professionals because it is kind of anesthetics for the public opinion, and we have to fight against this because people start sleeping somehow because of this. Yes, there are different ways. What about Europol? How do you face these challenges? How, concretely speaking, do you fight against cybercrime? Yes, first of all, we have to talk about the mandate of Europol and the whole background. Europol is the European agency of cooperation between different police. We are competent for organized crime, that is to say, it should involve at minimum 2 member states. For example, if you have a specific file with French people and it involves crime in France, Europol is not going to be competent for that. And by its own nature, because of the creation of this agency, the files we deal with, the countries themselves have to decide about priority. And also countries have an agreement with Europol. By this very nature, they need international cooperation. And for that purpose, there is an explosion of different files or cases, actually. And you talked about this, for example, pedopornography. There are cyber attacks increasingly, and we need to give priority or decide about the priorities because we have some resources. We have to coordinate these cases. This is done at different levels. What we see with the monitoring, which is carried out of the new threats. For example, recently, 3 months ago, there was a Congolan operation. It was the first time where we would involve some 10 countries. We would involve pedopornography and artificial intelligence. And you said it also.
Je perds mes mots en français.
Sorry, I'm losing my words in French, says the speaker. About the way the younger generations start using increasingly these kind of contents. You have hundreds of thousands of pedopornographic material which is being generated. So there is an escalation of the contents that are going to watch, an escalation of the violence of the contents, their age also. So the idea is to start with cases which are going to be of a new kind. And next to this, just to provide support at the international level, we do this through G4. I'm doing some ad for this other person. So today it's a permanent task force in Europol made up of 20 countries, 24 agencies. Right now we have some 30 people as a staff. So you have liaison officers, some analysts who have access to their database in their own country that they can work with us. So the aim of this task force is to give priority to specific cases and to put resources where the cases are going to be the priority of the countries, but also to be able to speed up this coordination. For example, with servers, which are going to be adverse facilities in different countries, to be able to speed up the blocking of the data, of evidence, even to send teams in the countries with the agreement of the countries. So while the servers are being used to recover the piece of evidence and without, of course, giving alarm to the administrators of the services. Also, we try really to give priority to specific cases. We have a also horizontal approach. We want to have a cross-cutting approach with the different cases. For example, there is one attack, and then there is one victim, and the police is going to attack this very specific case. Now the aim is to regroup the different cases, to do a cross-cutting exercise, to go even further, to identify in the different steps of the attacks what are the services that are used by the cyber criminals, and to identify the services which are used by these cyber criminals to push the countries to start investigations about these services. France is doing this well. Everything is very well centralized by the prosecutor's office in Paris. There is a legal framework which is very favorable in France to have cases against platforms, to go even further to recover data. And for that purpose, we have created different cross-cutting systems against platforms where they are going to do money laundering through crypto currency, and to find against anonymization services, which are used by cyber criminals. And we are thinking about a third operation aiming at fighting against forums used by cyber criminals to communicate among themselves. So the aim is not only to focus on the services and to remove a layer used by the criminals, but also to recover the data of these services. So it's really huge information about these cyber criminals and to help the investigators. Thank you very much.
Bitdefender is also one of the players in the fight against cybercrime. This fight takes the form of a large-scale police operation. Could you talk a bit more about Operation Reveal and your role in it? I think you have to just take a mic.
Hello. Yep. Thank you very much. So in Bitdefender back in 2015, we created a team dedicated to working directly with law enforcement. It's called the Draco team. It's a virtual team, so basically it has dedicated members, but we can spawn within the company whenever there's a case that requires more resources. When we started the team, we thought we were going to be the James Bond of the internet, which is not true. It's been actually an emotional roller coaster, because there's cases that you can solve and there's cases that you cannot solve. Or you know who the suspects are, but police can't arrest them because they're in a particular country, which will not work well with European countries. To answer directly your question for Revel, this was one of the most famous cases in terms of ransomware. The administrators running the case were, so to speak, professional, Russian-speaking, and very good at what they do. But eventually their operation got dismantled, and part of the affiliates were arrested, part of the infrastructure was taken down, and as Bitdefender, we were also able to, with the help of law enforcement obviously, we were able to come out with a decryption tool for the victims that did not want to pay. Since we had access to the ransom notes, and we were able to see how much money they were requiring, basically we saved $1 billion before reaching the criminals' pockets. So that's in terms of Reveal, but we were involved in also in other cases of ransomware, dark markets, CSAM investigations, and so on. So there's been hidden services that have been disrupted by us. So this is how it goes, and why I was saying it's an emotional roller coaster. It's because while on the technical side things can move faster or in a medium speed, police has to follow all the procedures, because if they make a mistake, the criminal walks away. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commandant Sensing, on le sait.
Yes, we know it. Fighting against cybercrime is a collective matter. We are representing it here. About the escalation of the conflicts, how can we enhance this cooperation? What about you? How do you get prepared? OFAC is in the judicial police. We work about the high-level criminal crime and about cybercrime. We were created in 2023 through a decree of the ministry. So we are coordinators of the investigation at the national level for fighting against cybercrime. So we got structured. We have 4 major structures, FAROS, so we just give information. We have also information, then a support group to help all the services in France for cyber support, and then I am the deputy chief for the operations and investigations. So all the legal breaches that exist. So we have 2 sections: cyber attacks, ransomware, people who ask, for example, for ransoms, and also different facilities to understand the full infrastructures of an hack. That is to say, for example, through phishing, how they have done it. And then another group that works for us, it's a support group, specialized one. There are only engineers, and they are part of the CRPG. So we are part of the CERT and allows us to have information about everything in relation with cyber. So we also work on darknet and ESB. We have a new group for that purpose. And what about cooperation with Europol? Yes, it's a main cooperation. We are almost in all the fields, all the current OTFs. G4 is important for us. It's an interlocutor on a daily basis, even several times a day. Organized crime has no border, and cybercrime even less borders. So you cannot remain in our own structures, in our own territory to fight against this efficiently. And also the cross-cutting cooperation is very important. Our cases, what I was talking at the beginning, we just notice these problems, and then we just bring the criminals to justice. So we are specialized, we are very efficient. Everybody is really jealous. So for our work, we have to find the evidence, we have to make a report about this, and then we send everything to a judge. And everything you should provide evidence. We cannot be told that we have not done everything the way it should have been done. So we do everything legally. And these are new crimes, actually. So we don't have lots of case law or judgments or orders. So we are obliged, I mean, sometimes we have to do lots of efforts to be sure that when things go to the court, that people who are going to study that, I mean, they are not cyber specialists, but they have to understand why we say that this person is a criminal, is a cyber criminal, or part of the criminal, and there shouldn't be any doubt about this.
Defender is a member of the Europol's advisory group on internet security. Can you tell us more about your role and what it means for you today?
Yes, we are a member of the advisory group since 2014. I think that's when we signed our MOU with Europol. Basically what it means is that every 3 months we meet together with Europol and other private partners in the same room. We spend together the entire day and we do some operational updates from both sides. Europol will tell us, okay, this is the latest cases that we solved. This is our plan for the next quarter, for the next year. We're also building this report, so we'd like you to help us. And from the other side, from the private sector, we also provide updates, not necessarily on the cases, but rather from a strategic perspective, what our plans are, what we're looking at, which are the latest threats or threat actors that are of interest. This helps out to fine-tune the vision that we have on cybercrime. And this is because, for instance, I had an initial conversation with Interpol many, many years ago. And the question that we both had to ask was, what's the biggest threat today? Us, the private sector, we immediately said, ransomware, obviously. But police said, no, from our perspective, it's business email compromise. And the reason was that we were seeing ransomware because we are a cybersecurity company deployed at companies and consumers, so we can see which is the threat that's targeting them. Law enforcement was receiving thousands of complaints of business email compromise because that's what people do when they get scammed like that. They make a complaint to the police. So their vision was based on complaints. our vision was based on telemetry. So having this operational meetings makes us seeing the whole picture. What you're seeing, what we're seeing, okay, how can we help you, how can you help us? We're providing technical assistance. Of course, they also have the means to do it themselves, but they have to work thousands of cases, right? Then there are not so many. We, the private sector, are many companies you see at this table, and we're from different visions, like crypto, cyber, and so on. So if we help them with the technical part, they can focus more on the actual arrest, because we can't arrest anybody, we're not involved into who the suspect is. Whenever we have these sprints, so there's a sprint means that all the countries participating in a case meet for a week and work on the case. So private sector is also invited to present, okay, this is what we see, this is what happens, this is how it works. But when the discussion starts about the suspects, private sector gets out the door.
Gavin, Coinbase is also a member of this group. How is it one of the most advanced example of public-private cooperation in the fight against cybercrime nowadays?
So the advances, we're not necessarily moving things forward in the process of law enforcement investigation. The advances really come with both the threat and the opportunity of the sheer amount of data that's there, the volumes of data that are engaged. That's the unique selling point for a lot of the private organizations like ourselves, Bitdefender and so on, bring to the table. So in Coinbase's example, we have 100 million customers in 100 countries in the world. Each of those represents a unique data point. Coming back to Paul's point, particularly in the fight against looking at proceeds of financial crime that seems to go through Bitcoin systems, each of those connection points is extremely valuable to our law enforcement partners in terms of the level of insight that we can drive from it, and indeed how we can engage and cooperate there going forward. For us in Coinbase, though, really the advances for us are more about how we can help advance and continue the effectiveness of the investigations and the work that's going on. So one of our key focuses, as well as joining in with the various sprints and so on in the same way as Bitdefender, we spend a lot of time and effort on education and engagement with our law enforcement partners. So we like to view ourselves as an open door that organizations can come to if they need to get any degree of technical know-how when it comes to cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology, and so on. We provide monthly information packs on threat intelligence that we put forward. We reactively work, certainly on all the kind of same things in terms of asset seizures and investigations. But I think the real value that we're trying to bring to the table to continue with those advances is how we engage, do the education, and enable our law enforcement partners to really maximize the intelligence that when things do come to the point it's put in front of a judge, that the technology aspects of it are well understood, will stand up in court, and will stand up to scrutiny.
Thank you very much. Paul-Alexandre, peut-être une réaction justement sur ce groupe aujourd'hui dont vous faites également du coup.
Alexander, perhaps a little bit of reaction from you because you're part of that working group within Europe. What does that mean for you currently to work with private sector actors? Well, I think I'm sort of stating the obvious here, but obviously it's crucial for us to, and that's really, it's kind of the essence of the purpose of Europol's working group, to kind of give you a bit more context about that. Europol currently, we're coordinating 4 advisory groups. We've founded and we coordinate 4 advisory groups. The first is Bitdefender, a member of that group that's focused on internet security. Second working group is financial. Coinbase is a member of that group. A number of leading banks and finances are also involved in that, crypto advisors do. We have our advisory group, which has just been updated, but actually it was uniquely just originally on telecommunications. We're now converting that into to focus more broadly on service providers. So that includes some of the tech giants. It used to be just to be trying to get telephone records in the past, but these days we want entire caches of server data. So that involves us working closely with there's tech giants. And the 4th working group, the advisory group, has just been founded this year, and which is going to be ramping up, I hope, over the course of the year. And that's a research and development advisory group, and that advisory group is going to bring together universities, academics, and with a goal to providing Europol with support for our actions, with potentially developing new tools, and maybe even publishing updates on the current state of the threat levels or the psychology of attackers, interaction between different groups. The idea of all these four advisory groups, the thematic advisory groups, is to cover a broad spectrum of criminality, to understand the nature of the threat and to give ourselves the keys and the cooperations, the cooperative relationships we need to effectively fight cybercrime. The idea, and again thanks to the MOU, which Gavin mentioned, or these companies that we work with regularly, they've agreed to sign a memorandum of understanding with us, and to show that they are willing partners with law enforcement. To have these partners that are trustworthy, verified partners is important. The verified by Europol is important. Next week, for example, next Monday, because we do meet every 3 weeks, we have the next plenary session of the Internet Security Advisory Group. We're going to spend the whole day together. We've got 27 partners, 27 private sector partners who are members of that Internet Security Private Group. We also have DG Connect and DG Home from the European Union as well are involved. The idea of these workshops and the advisory groups as a whole, when we set them up, it was ultimately it was to gather the current, learn a bit about the current, to take the temperature of the market, for Europol to let actors know about what kind of complaints we're getting, what dossiers we're working on, to see if our private sector partners, if that's reflected in what they're observing from their research, from their data. We're kind of evolving a little bit the nature of these advisory groups. They're becoming increasingly operational in nature. We organise, during these working days, during these meetings, we have ad hoc workshops. And that allows our private sector partners, if they have really interesting information which is really interesting for us as law enforcement, it gives them the opportunity to identify the future priorities, the cases which will be hot topics in the near future. Very often they come to us, they have cases which they present to us, and we are happy to receive that data. We follow up on it, and that helps us to coordinate for the future. And as Gavin's already mentioned, actually, we still organise our sprints. That sprint concept you've already been explained, but it was born of a necessity, really, the need to prioritise certain cases. LOFAC for the police national, or ONC for the gendarmes here in France, or the Préfecture de Police in Paris. They're all dealing with thousands of cases all the time. We have investigators working, 30, 40 cases at any one time. You can imagine the workload that represents for prosecutors. It's very difficult to them. All right, okay, prioritise this dossier now, prioritise this case, not another one. The goal of our sprints, at Europol, we organise these sprints. The idea is to bring people together in the same room, law enforcement officials from all of the countries working on similar cases. So for a whole week, we're in The Hague. I've been working this role for about a year and a half now. The way things work in The Hague, the weather's not quite the same, nothing's really quite the same. So you get to The Hague, there's nothing to do but work, essentially. So it's good to have all the partners in the same room, in this operations room in The Hague, to exchange all the data they've managed to gather, to give us the tips for future investigations, to talk about future operations. And as Catherine has already mentioned, we're increasingly focusing, during these sprint sessions, we're inviting private sector partners to join in, because they're indispensable, really, to the future. And the visibility, the vision, the perspective they have, and the tools and techniques also which they've developed for enforcement. And when they're willing to share those with law enforcement, we're happy to have them. And private sector partners, generally speaking, we only invite 4 maximum to take part in these sprint sessions. It gives them a chance to talk to our investigators, to talk to prosecutors, but obviously then we have to preserve confidentiality. If we start talking about sensitive data, obviously the private sector partners know that they're not allowed to be privy to those discussions. So they only take part in the technical side, generally speaking, of the sprint weeks. When we get down to the brass tacks of actually of prosecution data, we have sessions which are reserved exclusively for law enforcement officials. But just actually to close this little this little speech I've embarked on, since we have new regulations in Europol now, we're allowed to retrieve data directly from private partners now. We're authorized to do that. There's the new the recast, the Europol recast you've probably heard of. So I'll take this opportunity to get the message out there, actually, if of all the countries that we work with, there are public-private partnerships which are already in operation, then they're important. We're not trying to replace those existing partnerships, not by any means, but what we do want to do at Europol, with this new regulation, we have the opportunity, the possibility, if private partners do have sensitive information about cases which are currently being investigated or future cases. If there are multiple countries involved, there's a huge mass of information, the private partner, they can send that data to us immediately using a system which is called our cyber intelligence gateway. That's the one-stop shop issue. It's a single gateway which allows private partners to send us information which will be cross-checked and compared with our databases. We identify the countries which are affected by the threat, and then we can monitor the progress of that case country by country, and when necessary coordinate the investigations at European level. So we need you. We need that information. We need that public-private partnership to work. So please don't hesitate if you have that kind of information. It is always helpful to law enforcement, and that's what we're there for. There you go. Very much. The message is clear. I hope you're already writing your emails to Paul Alexandre to share your information with him and to keep that cooperation moving forward. Thank you very much, Paul Alexandre. Commandant, with artificial intelligence and new technologies more broadly coming online, which all everywhere now, the uptake has been among cyber criminals has been very rapid. How, as a police officer, as a police force, are you facing up to this constantly evolving threat and the new uses of technology by criminals? Organised crime, the first thing I say, they've got very good at cybercrime. Organised crime, cybercrime has become, it's been another way of improving their long-standing criminal activities. And they have the resources. They've really engaged with new technologies, including AI. And organised crime syndicates are really putting that technology to work for their purposes. We're using AI as well. Obviously, we're trying to adapt AI to our needs and purposes. With one drawback is that we don't have any margin for error. If we use AI to try and to do a massive data search, because obviously we have huge volumes of data we have to work through. We're using AI to help us better sort that data, to automatic translation, that sort of thing. But we need to be absolutely certain of what's being said and what we're trying to extract from the data. And AI is not quite there yet. AI, it's a tool, it's a help, it's an intermediary in some case, but it's not yet conclusive for us. But it helps with sorting with images, for example. But to use AI in my department, and it's my specialist crimes unit, we make use of it. We have 10 engineers in-house who are working on it, but we also need a suitable technical infrastructure. So that means resources. If we had, no limits, if there was no money, was no object, that'd be right. So you're talking about, yes, we have primarily financial object. Technical resources, we can find that, but it's all linked. And human resources, we need them, but there's never going to be enough investigators. We keep recruiting more and more. My unit, my department has gone from, we're about 50 in my pool. Now we have 20 officers working on secondment from other units. We've got 30 subunits in the region, so we cover the whole national territory, and we try to make sure that everybody has access to the same technical resources, even if they're at local level. They're not business partners. It's huge. The budget of that is massive, but it's a budget which needs to grow. And our engineers, we have engineers. We need more support from the private sector. We need public-private partnerships. We have some very promising public-private partnerships. the licensing cost is obviously an issue. It's not too bad when you're starting off, but ultimately, license costs become pretty heavy. We have other partnerships too. eCERT, it's really important to us because it helps us to be more involved with the economic dimension of things with other partners operating in the private sector. And essential to us is the feedback, the information. If I don't know, if for example in the private sector a private hospital gets hacked, we need, without a complaint being lodged, we can be immediately informed of these things. And the European Union has an important role to play here because the EU has dedicated funds for dedicated budget, which happens to what they call the impact system. That gives us the opportunity to get to grips with the new tools coming to the market to make sure we're keeping pace with criminals, really.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Mark, Alexandre, Gavin.
Technological solutions that effectively fight cybercrime in what way? Sorry, are these technology real assets, and do they complement each other's? And what are you currently working on to improve the technological capabilities of these tools? Mark, perhaps first, then Alexandre, and then Gavin.
Yes, so I'm rather happy that we broadened the definition of cybercrime here a little bit. So beyond the attack, but it's more about the abuse of new technologies for criminal purposes. I think what we do see nowadays. And what you see with all these new technologies, they're super complicated. So for example, in our case, we're doing dark web monitoring. Actually, what criminals do here is abusing privacy-preserving technologies. Because anonymity on the internet is not a problem, but they're using those technologies for criminal purposes, the crime is the problem. So that is the part we have to fight. And I think from the law enforcement perspective, it's impossible to understand on every technology. We have challenges on AI, we have challenges on blockchain, and on every angle of the technologies, there is kind of abuse taking place that every company, I think here on the table, wants to fight against. So we have a deep understanding of how the dark web works and how the crimes work and what's going on over there. And in close cooperation, and I think co-creation is a good term, but the kind of the constructs that we discussed here before are really great ways to move things forward. Because let's say we understand a bit of the technology, but we are not police side, and the police side doesn't understand fully the implication of technology, but doing this together makes us stronger. So for the last 5 years, and honestly that's also a little bit where the name of my company comes from, flow, we need to work together to come in a flow and really get things done. If people don't want to work together, doesn't want to get things done, it doesn't help. So we are always keen in making partnership with people who really want to push things forward. And the main things we are working on, and our closest partner is Prosecutor's Office in Bavaria. They are very keen in understanding the new technologies and making the cases. And this is what we do in a very trusted setting, also together with an industrial partner from Austria, who is doing the crypto analytics. And that's where we connect the crimes from our side to the payments in cryptos. And then they can contact Coinbase, for example, like, hey, do you have more information about this suspect? Because we believe he is using this kind of crime, or this is the suspicion why we're contacting you. And this is where we think, or that I believe, that also law enforcement should push the industry a little bit, like, hey guys, make your tools work together. So it's not only people working together, but also the technologies to work together to be quicker to the right entities or the right pieces of information.
Of course. Alexandre, maybe?
Yeah, I'm going to echo that, that you need to build the tools together with law enforcement, because our engineers can imagine things the way they would like to look like, but when you present it to a judge or a police officer, they'll say like, I can't work with this, it's not helping me. So it's very ideal that when you start to work on such a tool, even if you just have like the basic idea or a proof of concept, to start working together, incorporating feedback, doing several iterations, and so on. The tools that we developed for law enforcement, obviously some of them I'm not able to disclose. And even within my organization, there's a selected number of people that know about it. Because if the information that these tools exist will mean cyber criminals will say, ah, so that's possible, okay, I'll move to something else. And that's the reason of the secrecy of it, not something else. One other tool that I can talk about, it's we've built something called the Law Enforcement Portal, for the lack of a better name. Don't worry, I have even a worse name later. So basically, this is a tool that if you know somebody from Bitdefender, or if you know me and you're a police officer in a friendly country, you get free access to it. Okay, and you also get 2 invites to invite 2 of your colleagues and 2 of your colleagues and so on. It's like spread within the organization. It contains an OSINT tool, a dark web monitoring tool, and also a dark web time machine. So basically, it'll look like a particular hidden service, how it was today, a month ago, a year ago, even if it's no longer online today. So that will help. Because, for instance, just a simple example, ransomware authors or ransomware affiliates, whenever they're closing down their business, they go to the forums and say, delete everything about me. So having the possibility to look in the past really helps you out. And the last technology that we just presented this year at Europol Innovation Days, for the lack of a better name again, it's called Forum DB from database. It's an internal name. We'll figure it out. We'll come up with something else. Basically, this is a crawler for ClearNet and Darknet forums, which sometimes host criminal activity. And we put a bunch of AI on top of it to summarize, translate, provide intel, like who's talking to whom, who is also present in several other cases and so on. And it's not included yet in the law enforcement, but it will be in the near future.
Yeah, very operational. And Gavin?
And for us, we are working in 3 different streams. So private-public, private-private, and private-public-private. So similar to my other speakers, a lot of the stuff that we're doing internally, we're not super keen about talking about too publicly, but being a financial institution, we are, in my opinion, slightly more advanced than some of the more traditional financial institutions in terms of using artificial intelligence to speed up how we look for and analyze something that could be an anti-money laundering trigger, a CTF type trigger. So I think we're getting a lot faster and more proactive in terms of how we identify and then communicate those information on. On a private-private basis, we're also taking some efforts more on a wider kind of public basis to try and raise the game from a defensive perspective. So just last week, for example, Coinbase released our code for our multi-party computational encryption methods and processes to GitHub publicly to encourage other financial institutions, including our competitors, to improve their own cryptographic processes and practices. We put that out there publicly for a motivated security audience. We do have bug bounties available. If anybody can find any flaw or vulnerability in that code, please do come let us know. We will happily pay you for any issues you might find there. And on the public, private side of things, we're also starting to work more on the private with a view that when there is incidents of a security perspective, particularly in the blockchain and crypto space, that we want to collaborate aggressively to address those, to move the dial forward, and then to engage at the appropriate time with our law enforcement partners to kind of look at those and how we respond at a much more broad responsive perspective there, as everybody being involved at the same time typically means a better response. We all learn more from the processes and we all protect to prevent these issues happening again.
Yeah, very interesting, this one. Eric, la Human Technology Foundation est particulièrement attachée au développement de technologies qui soient éthiques. On vient juste...
Human Technology Foundation, you're talking about ethical technologies. How do you integrate that ethical dimension into tools? What are the essential guardrails that we need to see? Good question, because generally speaking, when the IT technicians walk in the room, everyone goes, no, it's kind of like, you get they're just there to bother you. Yesterday I was speaking on a roundtable sessions about command loops with operations, and but ethics has an important role to play then, and warfare as well. Ethics in time of war. There is a permanent tension between efficiency and efficacy. You know, there's an army officer said, "Well, if you go to war, you want to win the war, but you don't want to win at any cost, because we have to reign true to our values, to our principles as democracies, as France, as members of the European Union. So how do we handle that tension between efficiency, efficacy, and ethics? How do we manage those conflicts of interests? To give you an example just like that, with facial recognition, we've worked with some private companies on this. In some cases, there may be a legitimate demand for transparency, what happens if but on the other hand, there is a need for security. Too much transparency can be an impediment to security. We've worked with public sector teams. We're working with the government of Canada on their digital identity scheme. We also work in the private sector a lot. And in all of that work, our idea is to make sure that ethics is there, ethics by design. We realize that too many systems are not ethical by design. They are designed which they make themselves too open to misuse, to malicious use. And what we're talking about with generative AI, for example, there's a massive amount of work that needs to be done. But also ethics is something that's dynamic, it's ever-loving. So that's why we were committed to test and learn and to continuously evolving our protocols. I think the first thing which needs to be done, and I think basically almost nobody does this properly, is to clearly identify and define your values. Prioritize your values. For example, are you more interested in freedom or people's confidentiality? Until you've really clearly defined your values, you're kind of just improvising and making it up as you go along. Once you have your clearly defined values, then you can start to really building something which resembles a functional ethical charter. Big organizations like the Post Office, they have this, AXA, they have this. We've helped them, we've worked with them to put together an ethical charter which that becomes the kind of the backbone. It's the thread that runs through them, or the deployment of all the technologies that come online. I mean, ethics and technology, it's not about haggling and niggling or haggling over small details. It's about being effective. It's about establishing your red lines. The fewer ethical red lines you are, the better it is for you, the more easily you can defend those red lines. So I like that kind of minimalistic approach to it. Be clear about a small number of principles and implement them properly. And this is true of public sector institutions and private sector companies. And in the public sector, a lot of people, they're obliged to do this. I mean, they're obliged by the government. But when it becomes operational, when you really get down to the brass tacks and things get difficult, that's where it gets interesting. I sit on the ethics committee for the Post Office, for example. And a real question now is, in a group which is vast and as big as the French Post Office, they do health insurance, they do banking, they do postal deliveries. How do we make sure that what the group says it represents, how do they actually make sure that they live up to that? A major difficulty that we're encountering, especially in the last 18 months, but I think this really is true of all sectors of activity, it's that we're increasingly seeing technologies which are super accessible to users. I'm thinking about generative AI. It used to be quite top-down. It used to be applied by the top of the employers. Then, when you have that top-down approach, the ethical burden is borne by the senior management, effectively. When you get something like generative AI, which anybody can use at any level of the company, anybody can use it for good or for evil. So when it's that widespread, the ethical responsibility is much more broadly disseminated. It's spread amongst all users, so everybody needs to be educated and to be trained to prepare to use that effectively. It's interesting, you talk about user responsibility, which is or should be in any case a major subject now. What's your view on the human factor in the fight against cybercrime? Well, I mean, let's not lie. I mean, humans are always the weak link in the chain. I mean, when I was talking about brain hacking a while ago, humans are perhaps the least secure element in the chain. I was thinking of a security breach there was a few years ago. 6 million user profiles for a big bank in Canada ended up published on the dark web. But what actually happened was that an IT technician who was fired, who had a grudge against the bank, he stole a hard drive with all that information. He stuck it on the dark web. How could you do that? I mean, if an IT technician has that kind of access, you have to take the human factor into consideration, and the complexity and the bias of the human factor. You have to know a little bit about the way we work as people. Very often, I think we tend to think that people are like machines. If you program people to do a job, they'll do it. Or if you tell you have to do it, they'll do it. But come on, as police forces, law enforcement, you're pretty well placed to know that people don't always do what they're supposed to do. So how do we get around that? I mean, it's about support, education, nudges in some cases. It's about guiding people in the right, steering people in the right direction. And in the cyber domain, particularly cyber security, until we have a massive disaster, everyone thinks there's no problem. You're always hearing, oh wow, so-and-so has been hacked, so-and-so. People just don't really understand the full scale of the threat until they're directly personally affected. So I think what you want to be making people feel anxious, I think is legitimate. I mean, don't hesitate to make people scared. Demonstrate to them the scale of their responsibilities. Worrying people is not enough, though. They need to be educated and supported. There needs to be a greater awareness. Too many people are just ignorant of the basic reflexes, the things which you would do just obviously by default. But, too many people just don't understand the first thing about security. And one final point, and I think perhaps this is the most important point of all, is to work on improving the user experience. Too often we have security protocols which are super complex. I remember I was talking about this with a specialist in sovereign cloud services, and I said, he said, oh wow, everyone should use this cloud. It's so easy. All you do is tap in your password, you get a confirmation on your telephone, you click on that, you authenticate yourself, then you go somewhere else on Google. I said, no way, man, drag and drop. Drag and drop. I've got loads of examples of friends who work in the police, and they're not interested in protocols. But Hillary Clinton, for example, we all remember, the private email server, the fact that she was able to do that. So I think we need to, until the user experience is better, until it's as good, as strong as your protocol securities, people will always take the easy option rather than the safer option. Of course, unfortunately, that's the link in the chain, the human link. Paul Alexander, I'm looking at you now about strengthening the fight against climate change. That involves closer collaboration with member states. We know that not just EU member states, but we know that Asia, for example, cybercrime is booming in Asia. Europol, you're increasingly developing partnerships with Japan, I know. You have South Korea, Singapore too. What particular domains are you focusing on? Can you tell us a bit more about those partnerships? Yes, so as I said earlier, Europol is essentially our primary goal is to support the member states of the European Union. Europol does have operational and strategic partnerships with other countries outside Europe, countries who already regular cooperation with our member states in the EU. But in recent years, we have unfortunately seen a greater need for cooperation with countries in Asia, particularly Southeast Asia. Japan is a great example of this. Japan is a country which does not yet have an operational agreement with Europol. It just has a strategic relationship. But they do attend our. They have a liaison office at our HQ in The Hague. They have 3 officers, Japanese officers, based at The Hague permanently. What's the goal, what's the aim of this cooperation? Well, ultimately it's an operational coordination if it's not currently being put down in writing. But if we have, for example, cases of ransomware and cybercrime where they've already been cooperating with Japanese police on a number of cases, and gradually, as we've collaborated on more and more cases, I could give you an example. Actually, the recent one, the Kronos operation against the Lockbit ransomware. Japan was really closely involved in that operation. They developed a decryption tool, which was really useful to law enforcement. globally speaking, including that was for the Lockbit ransomware. The most recent sprint session we had, we talked through that Kronos operation against Lockbit. We had a collaborator from Tokyo, and all the working members sent technicians to Japan. We did it in Tokyo. We had our week in Tokyo, working full-time with our partners from the Japanese prosecutor's office. As part of that cooperation agreement, we're in discussions currently to, well, since it's technically only a strategic cooperation we have with Japan, in the future, we're allowed to, or authorized to receive information from Japan using the secure channel that we have to collaborate with to coordinate with the European members. Unfortunately, though, operational data, we can only share that with member states and members who have signed a operational coordination partnership. So we can share data with Japan directly, but member states can, but Europol cannot. So that's the current state of the cooperation. South Korea, very briefly. South Korea also now has a liaison office. We're going to see increasingly collaborating with Europol with South Korea. More recently, in an investigation against one particular ransomware, which I won't name, we started collaborating with the Singaporean police, who they're working in some of our coordination efforts now, and they've become a really key part of that working group, actually, under the same terms as the Japanese police. It's a strategic coordination. But increasingly, we're seeing threats coming from that part of the world for cybercrime threats. The most recent one, we've seen targets in Thailand, more recently, targets in Thailand. So I think we're going to have to work in much closer collaboration with Thailand as well. So that's about all I can tell you for the moment of the current state of cooperation with those countries in Asia. But again, what's really good is that it's really operationally led. And it's driven by necessity, essentially, the needs of our operations. So we start by putting together these cooperation, this operational cooperation was informed by operational necessities, and then, over time, gradually those relationships become stronger, that we learn to develop and to sign, where possible, operational coordination. Okay, excellent. Well, very interesting to see where those operational cooperations go in the future, whether it be with Japan or with South Korea. Mark.
Things are moving forward. Dialogue is being facilitated. Last December, you joined the multi-partner project Ensemble for enhancing collaborative investigations against cybercrime. Can you tell us more about it, and which are the players, what are the objectives, and what is the work you are going on?
Yes. So one of the main means how we innovate in our company is, for example, through these European projects. So this is a Horizon Europe project. It's going to take 3 years. It has 5 law enforcement agencies in the project, 7 research partners and 6 companies, if I have the numbers right, with the focus on AI cybercrime. So that is where we do see, well, in cybercrime, there's so much data generated. We need to have AI technologies to become efficient, but also to become reliable, following proper ethics methodologies. So all these elements are in the project. And one of the examples from CFlow, where we are really keen on to work with, it's kind of an ethical approach of AI. Usually, if you train your AI model, which is, if you look at the exhibition, the solution to everything, but for us, and I have a PhD in this, AI is never perfect. So, like we as humans are never perfect and making mistakes in our judgments or in our understanding. So let's take that as part of the design. You have an output of your AI. For example, we think this is a website for a bank, but it's a phishing website. But the AI can be wrong. And if an expert sees it's wrong, how is he going to give feedback? Or if somebody else sees it's wrong, wrongly tagged or wrongly classified. And this is what we start to call collaborative AI, where experts and AI start to work together, where experts correct the AI, but at the same time, and we have seen many examples where, for example, experts have to classify huge amounts of data or huge amounts of entities. Experts make mistakes as well, and the AI perfectly is able to discover the inconsistencies. So that is where we start to see like AI and experts can work together on getting a real good data quality of the analysis. So these are typical things that we can research, test in operational cases or near operational cases, and then having the industry partners in the project to translate this into the products where we deliver them to law enforcement. The good news for the law enforcement agencies involved in this project, they got products that really better fit to their needs, coming back to my co-creation point before, because that's what we do in the project.
Thank you very much. Paul-Alexandre, on l'a compris, il faut aller plus loin encore.
Yes, we have
Et
to
c'est ce
go
que vous
even
souhaitez faire,
further.
vous,
This is what
à
you want to
Europol,
do
avec
in
ce que vous appelez
Europol.
l'after-action
You
effect.
call
Qu'est-ce que
it
ça va
after
permettre
action
concrètement et quand est-ce
effect.
que ce sera
What does it
opérationnel?
mean and when is it going to be operational?
Alors, très clairement, le but pour nous,
Very
c'est
clearly the aim
de
for
capitaliser en fait
us
sur le travail
is to
des forces
use
de l'ordre,
the
l'énorme
work
travail
of
qui est
the
fait
law
au niveau de
enforcement
tous les pays et de tous
authorities
toutes les
and
agences que l'on
the
appuie,
police and
pour
all
finalement
agencies to
multiplier
which
encore
we
plus
provide
ça
support
et
to
avoir vraiment
multiply
un
even
impact,
more
à
the
plus ou moins,
outcome and to have an
moyen
impact
terme et long terme
on the
sur
middle
cet
term and
écosystème.
long term on this ecosystem.
L'une des manières, par exemple,
One
c'est
of
de
the
pouvoir
ways is
inclure
to
de
be
plus en plus le
able
volet
to
prévention,
include
dans
prevention
les activités.
increasingly in the
On
activities.
l'a vu par exemple
We have
en
seen
avril
it, for
2024 d'abord
example, in
avec
April
l'opération
2024 with the
contre
Stargrew
la plateforme de
operation
phishing Labost.
against
Le but
Labos
n'était pas
phishing
seulement
platform. The aim was not
mettre un
only
terme et de
to put an
démanteler la
end and
plateforme en elle-même,
dismantle the
mais
platform
également
as such,
d'identifier ses
but
utilisateurs.
also to
Le but
identify
était
its
également de faire
users
passer un message
and also to
à
convey
tous les
a
autres
message
utilisateurs,
to
parce que
all the
finalement,
other
les forces de l'ordre ne
users,
peuvent pas
because
cibler
the
l'intégralité des
police
utilisateurs d'une
forces
plateforme,
cannot
et certains sont
know
juste en train de
who are
commencer
all the
dans
users. Some of
leurs
them have
activités
just started their
cybercriminelles. Et le but, c'est justement pour
cybercrime
ceux qui viennent juste de
activities, and
commencer,
just for
de
the
pouvoir
ones who have
utiliser
just
ce type
started,
d'opération
to
pour pouvoir
use
faire
this
passer un
kind of
message
operation
clair
to
à
convey
ces
a
jeunes
clear
utilisateurs
message
pour
to these
éviter
young
à l'avenir
users to avoid
qu'ils
in the
basculent
future for
finalement
them
complètement
to
du mauvais côté, entre
go
guillemets.
to the wrong side.
On a eu aussi
Totally.
un autre exemple,
We had
donc aussi
another
appuyé
example,
par, comme
a
on l'appelait,
case
Cyborg chez nous, qui gère tout le volet
supported by
cyberattaque.
Cyborg,
L'opération Power Off,
the Power
en
of
décembre
Operation
dernier,
last
qui
December,
justement a mis un terme et a
it put an end and
27
dismantled
services
27
qui
services
facilitaient les attaques des DOS.
that would
Le but,
facilitate
c'était
the
pas
DOS
seulement de
attacks.
démanteler,
It was not
ces
only a matter
services-là,
of
mais également faire
dismantling these
passer un
services, but
message,
also to convey a
entre
message
guillemets, oui, jeunes
to
utilisateurs
the
de
young
ces
users
services.
of these services.
Clairement, les attaques des DOS, c'est vraiment
The
ce
DOS
qui se fait de plus
attacks
basique
are really
en termes
basic
de
attacks,
cyberattaques, mais c'est aussi
basic
par là
cyber
que les
attacks.
futurs hackers en puissance
And the
commencent en réalité.
future
Ils commencent à se
hackers
tester
start
eux-mêmes, ils veulent
there to
avoir, au
test
départ, ils sont
themselves.
énervés contre,
At
par
the
exemple, une
at the
institution
beginning, they
X
are,
ou Y, et
for
ils vont
example,
utiliser ce type de service
angry
pour,
about an
comment,
institution, and they
effectivement
are
tester
going
un
to
peu,
use this
leurs
service
compétences. Le
to
but, c'est d'éviter
test
qu'ils
their
basculent
own
complètement, du
skills.
mauvais côté,
So we
et
don't
de
want
passer
them to go to the
justement
wrong
le côté
side.
sensibilisation et
We
prévention,
do
en plus
prevention and
comment,
awareness
de cette
raising
action,
activity
purement, répressive.
next to this repressive
En
action.
plus de ça, le but
So
pour nous,
together
encore
with
une fois,
this,
dans la
the
priorisation des
aim
dossiers, parce qu'on a
is to
plusieurs,
give
comment,
priority to the
des dizaines de
specific
milliers
cases
de
because
demandes
we have
d'appui,
tens
chaque
of
année. Le
thousands
but,
of
c'est vraiment
requests
de
for
pouvoir aussi
support
mieux prioriser les
each year.
dossiers,
So we have to
de
better
manière à pouvoir
prioritize
rediriger,
our
comment, un
cases,
appui,
to
fait sur
provide
mesure
support,
sur, comment, les dossiers en question. Et, à cet
customized
effet, essayer, et on va
support,
l'introduire d'ailleurs la semaine prochaine,
and
lors du
we are
prochain
going to
Advisory Group, on va
introduce
demander
it
aussi, comment,
next week.
l'appui des partenaires privés pour
We
ce
have
faire,
asked the
d'essayer de
support of
mesurer finalement,
private
de mieux
partners
évaluer, l'action
and
d'une
to
opération sur l'écosystème
assess
cyber.
better the
Typiquement, par exemple, dans le cadre de
impact on a
l'opération Endgame,
ecosystem.
de
For
l'année dernière,
example, last year
effectivement,
operation,
c'était une des premières opérations
it was one of the
très compliquées à
first
coordonner parce que ça
operations which
impliquait
are
quand même,
very
le
complicated
takedown
to
de 5 botnets. Le but, c'est pas seulement de dire, bon, ok,
coordinate.
il y a eu une très belle
The aim
opération,
is not
il y a eu
just to
des
say we
très
had a
belles vidéos en
beautiful
super psychote qui a été
operation,
faite.
there
Quel a
was
été
a beautiful
vraiment
cyber site.
l'impact de
What has
cette,
been
de
the
cette
actual
opération sur
impact of this
l'écosystème?
operation
On a
on
eu
the
des premières
ecosystem?
métriques
We
de,
have the
comment,
first
de
measures
certains partenaires privés
of some of
qui
the
ont montré
private
une,
partners
comment,
who
une claire
have
chute,
shown
comment,
a clear
du
drop
déploiement de malware
of the
via,
use
comment,
of
grâce à ces
malwares
développeurs, quelques mois qui ont suivi
after a few months after this action. So the aim is a better assessment of the cases. That is to say, where are we going to put our own efforts? Because Christophe has also talked about this matter to know whether if this operation, if we don't see any change in the number of attacks or the way there is any evolution, it means that we have missed something and we should improve things afterwards. Or, on the contrary, to change the focus, to shift the focus about the cybercrime. So this is going to be really a focal point that we are just studying.
Dans la continuité finalement
Then
d'exploitation des grosses opérations
we
judiciaires
use
menées par les pays
huge
en appui,
judicial operations, and the different agencies are able to just get a hold on data, huge data.
Et là, le but
And there the aim
pour nous et le
for
challenge
us and the challenge
cette donnée elle est contribuée à Europol par la suite.
is to give this data to Europol and to use them. Up till now, we just feed our system with this data, and each time there is a request from a member state, we can produce an analysis report, and we use the different inputs and cases. But we see that there are different services which include tens or millions of users. For example, after the talent operation, which allowed us to seize 2 platforms, they have 10 million users, registered users. I mean, these are 10 million accounts. Of course, one user can have several accounts. But in the meantime, these 10 million accounts are going to be put aside, become available for request, and the future challenge is to be able, the way the cybercrime was able to do so, to do proactive analysis of this data and to highlight users, to highlight networks, cybercrime groups, which up till now had not been identified by the police. We were talking about public-private cooperation. I would like also to thank the information of Coinbase that, well, I'm not going to give you the name of the case, but we were able last week to identify one of the Norwegian cyber criminals. So it's just putting together all the data, the investigations, and different present cases, together with the adding up of this partnership between private and public authorities, so the Europol can also do properly its job. Thank you very much, sir. Yes, cooperation is being reinforced. What about you? How do you imagine the future of this cooperation, maybe by 2030? It's difficult to imagine things. This is our wish. We want this cooperation to go on and to develop further. Yes, we are organizing well this cooperation between the different services, between the public and private sector. It's important to work with private companies and organize this cooperation so that different services in other countries don't do the same as us. Just Europol is very important at that level. It allows us to put together everything and to have a larger vision. International cooperation, of course, has to increase. Europol is becoming increasingly important. It's very legitimate. We need to work with them. Interpol also. We don't use them so much because we are European countries, but should be a focus towards Asia. Interpol, yes. So we have to develop things further with them. I would like to give you an example why cooperation is important. Last year, we had a case through G4 because Logicat 4 was working with the Americans. It was a bank, so they lose $14 million in cryptocurrency from a former employee, and this person has a residence in France, but he doesn't live there. He goes to Dubai, Italy, and finally we arrest this person in Italy. So in this case, you have very many different countries which are involved, so very many different laws, of course. What about the legal side? We have to be in compliance with the law. But if you want to look for someone in Italy, you have to take care of specific laws. Europol, Eurojust also help us a lot. They give us means through European Commission, European Union. So in actual fact, when you want to fight against cybercrime, cooperation is extremely important. It's going to develop further. We don't know where we are going to be in 5 years' time, but it's stronger than last year, and it's going to be stronger later.
What about you as a private player? What would you like to see happen?
2 words. More cooperation. No, for us, it's great. We love the advisory groups. We love the outputs. It is not entirely selfless that we engage in these processes. We benefit a lot from the threat intelligence and information that gets shared our way too. What we'd love to see, as mentioned there, is more harmonization across the Europol, Interpol world in terms of streamlining those top 10 hit list that we have for threat actors, threat concerns. Europol's already leading the way on their JCAT efforts there. So more of that is exactly what we want to see.
Thank you very much, Gavin. Il nous reste quelques minutes pour
We still have a few minutes. Do we have any question in the room? Could you raise your hand and we are going to give you a microphone. I'm sure you have questions. Any question in the audience? Please raise your hand and we give you a microphone.
J'arrive tout de suite.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and congratulations on such a fruitful discussion. I was wondering if in the partnership between the private and the public sector, were there any issues concerning the confidentiality of the data that was shared by the public sector with the private sector? Because there are groups with police officers together with representatives from the firms, from the companies. And when you put the data together, because Mark was saying that the machines should work together and having data put together, if there were any issues concerning the confidentiality of the data gathered by the public sector. And on the other hand, if there were any issues before the court after the trial when using the tools that the companies offered, if there were issues before the court. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I don't know who wants to answer. Maybe Alexandre? Yeah?
In English or in French?
En anglais, en français.
As you want, I think maybe in English.
All right, sorry for my French accent in advance. But in principle, for instance, when we speak about the advisory group members, actually, since we know exactly they are trustworthy partners, we know exactly more or less how they are gathering the data. So in principle, we don't have any issue to receive data from such partner. When it comes to like other or new ones, then of course there is kind of an assessment that is being made, depending of course of the nature of the data, how it has been received. But if it's still of relevance for the country in question, we still have the mandate actually to identify the affected countries and to share it with them, but as intelligence and also taking into account the proper handling codes or conditions that the companies are using to share the data with us. In the private industry, it's more like the TLP handling conditions. We have our own ones using the Siena system with different age conditions, but it's more or less the same. So when it comes to the judicial use of such data, actually it's really on a case-by-case situation. There are definitely some countries, and I'm thinking for instance of the US agencies, that can use the major part, if not all, of the data contributed by the private sector on their cases at, let's say, for judicial use. In France, for instance, because I was in France 1.5 years ago, still leading the cyber operations department of the CERT. To judicialize the data, it really depends on the magistrate and how the data is contributed and the countries in question. So it will be always after that a discussion at a judicial level between the French judicial authorities, for instance, and the companies that provided the data to see if this data is acceptable in court, how it has been contributed, and if not, then if there is another way for, let's say, the law enforcement of this country to acquire the data legally through another mean.
Thank you very much. Maybe Alexandru, Gavin, or Mark, you want to add something? Yeah, Mark, yeah, go on.
A very short one from our side. The data that we collect is usually used as intelligence. So it's open source intelligence, and it's used to get a home search. And during the home search, you got real evidence, you got the evidence, or it's a home search or a seizure of a server, and then the evidence is on the server. So in our cases, it's usually intelligence.
Thank you very much. Yeah?
Just a joke, we don't accidentally add people on signal groups.
I hope so. Est-ce qu'il y aurait une autre question dans la salle?
Do we have any other question in the audience? We still have a few minutes. Any question?
Hello, thank you for your intervention. And sorry for my own French accent.
You can ask it in French. Enfin, vous pouvez la poser en français si vous préférez.
You can ask your question in French.
In the beginning of this intervention, you mentioned the link between cybercriminality and nation states, but you didn't go further. Do you see any interesting trends involving the use of malwares available on cybercriminal forums by nation states, whether it is for efficiency purposes or discretion of the operations?
Thank you very much. I don't know who want to answer. Maybe. Come on. Non. Un désigné volontaire peut-être. Eh bien, il s'est auto-désigné. Merci beaucoup, Paul Alexandre.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
For this question. Actually, well, it's a tricky one because obviously, again, I mean, main mandate is to fight against organized crime, not really nation state, which normally relies on like the intelligence services of the different countries, including, I think, in France. However, in the course of the investigation, you can find definitely sometimes links or like potential. I would say that basically what we are seeing sometimes is they might be some like indirect link between groups, or now like it's not that straightforward between let's say nation and specific cyber criminal groups. There have been some links that have been like highlighted based on well, definitely like communication acquired or stuff like that, or some part of the infrastructure, but it's super blurry, so to speak. It's really hard to really define it, and at a judicial level, actually, I mean, this is the prime concern is really about the target themselves, and not really after that, like to establish clearly these links. It's one layer above. But it really depends actually on the cases. What I can say is really in the last, let's say, years, regarding the cases that we are supporting when it comes to cyber attacks, we have seen these links. but it really depends on the group of the actors. And right now, actually, we have an initiative that is, well, I won't name the operation code name, but and we had a sprint recently on that. So these initiatives aim at basically gathering all the different already processed information on the biggest cyber criminal actors and groups to properly map out this infrastructure and these groups, the link that they have between them as well, because as you could see, there are different actors that are evolving in different actually network and group of people. And based on that, to really identify who are really like behind, let's say, these groups, and to really chase after that and narrow down the, let's say, the high value target actors. So this initiative is still ongoing. Is now ongoing. We might have like an OTF, so an operational task force regarding this specific operation in the coming weeks. And this might lead to, let's say, specific new findings. That's all I can say for now.
Thank you very much, Paul Alexandre. Yeah, you want to add something?
Yeah, so there are ways when these criminal groups overlap. So for instance, there are governments out there who use criminal group to fund military operations or either cyber espionage techniques. It's easier to do it like that. You don't have to justify where you're having the funding from. It's a secret operation, and you're going to see some hacking or ransomware activities with the sole purpose of funding government activities. That's already known to be happening. Also, they work together in terms of let's say, exchange experience or exchange parts of code or vulnerabilities. If you see a ransomware family where you see a new hacker using a new vulnerability recently exploited, you will see state attackers looking at that. Hey, I could use that to do my own stuff. You will see attacks towards critical infrastructure or national institutions that start and are active for months. And then when they just want to clean out and make an exit, they throw in a ransomware, encrypt everything, charge some money. The government agency will not pay. They don't negotiate with terrorists, so to speak. But the whole idea was not the ransomware. They don't care about the money. They were just caring about the data that was being exfiltrated. And these attacks last for months, so they have access to tons of information. But the groups are overlapped. Sometimes they know that they're working for a government. Sometimes the criminal doesn't know who they're working for.
Thank you very much, Alexandru. Est-ce qu'il y aurait une dernière question?
Do we have one last question in the audience? One last question? No? No question? Thank you so much to all of you for your presence here, for this round table.
Je pense que s'il y a un mot véritablement à
I think that we have to keep one word, is the strength of the collective, of the group. Otherwise, nothing is possible, especially for fighting against cybercrime. Thank you so much for being here. Have an excellent day.